It's the mid-1970s, and guitarists around the world are captivated by the electrifying sound Eddie Van Halen is bringing to rock music. At a time when guitar solos were already seen as the ultimate showcase of a musician's prowess, Eddie's two-handed tapping technique broke all the rules, redefining what the instrument could do. With this unconventional style, Eddie quickly cemented himself as a guitar legend, bringing a level of technical brilliance that astounded both audiences and fellow musicians. His playing wasn't just skilled, it was revolutionary, a kind of innovation that would inspire a new generation and forever change the landscape of rock guitar. However, what most fans didn't know was the complicated undercurrent between Eddie Van Halen and Jimmy Page, the guitarist of an earlier era whose haunting, multi-layered soundscapes had established Led Zeppelin as one of the greatest rock bands in history. Page, revered for his mystical compositions and daring improvisations, stood as a pillar of classic rock, an almost untouchable icon. Yet beneath the surface, Page and Van Halen's relationship was layered with admiration, creative influence, and, as time would tell, a touch of rivalry. Years later, Page would reveal that their dynamic defied simple definitions. It evolved from mutual respect into something far more intricate, a journey shaped as much by their differences as by what united them. Each guitarist represented a distinct epoch in rock history but shared the same ambition to push musical boundaries. For Van Halen, Page had been an inspiration from the very beginning. As a young guitarist, Eddie was mesmerized by Page's ability to conjure raw, powerful sounds with seemingly mystical techniques. Page's one-handed riffs and fluid style intrigued Eddie, setting him on a path that would eventually lead to his pioneering two-handed tapping method. But as Van Halen rose to fame and confidence, he didn't hesitate to critique the very musicians who had once inspired him. By the 1980s, Eddie's criticisms of Page's live performances, calling them sloppy and imprecise, startled fans and cast a shadow over their mutual admiration. Van Halen's bold commentary positioned him as a prodigy unafraid to challenge the established icons of rock, creating a subtle yet undeniable tension between the two giants. Picture this: a teenage Eddie Van Halen, wide-eyed and eager, standing in the crowd at a Led Zeppelin concert at the Forum in Los Angeles. Jimmy Page, clad in his infamous dragon suit, was deep into a blistering solo that defied the limits of a single guitar. For Eddie, it was a defining moment. Page's mastery and reckless abandon fused into a performance that felt like a summons to push beyond known boundaries. While Page lifted his hand mid-riff and used just one to create intricate, echoing notes, Eddie saw an opportunity not just to imitate but to innovate. He went home that night inspired, determined to build on what he had witnessed and to shape it into something wilder, something uniquely his own. Eddie's admiration for Page was deep, but it was never blind. As his own style developed, he embraced tapping with an orchestral twist. While Page used his free hand to tap the fretboard occasionally, Eddie expanded on the technique, blending it with melodic phrasing to create something entirely new. Still, as Van Halen's star rose, so did his willingness to challenge his heroes. He openly praised Page's songwriting and studio craftsmanship, calling albums like Led Zeppelin I** and *2* classics. Yet, his memories of Page's live shows remained unkind. In a bold 1981 Guitar World interview, Eddie shocked fans by claiming Page's live playing sounded as if he's got a broken hand and he's 2 years old. For fans of both guitarists, Eddie's comments felt like a gauntlet thrown down. Jimmy Page, the towering figure who had defined an era with thundering riffs and supernatural stage presence, was being openly criticized by a rising star with unmatched technical prowess. The critique symbolized a changing of the guard, a shift in what the new generation valued in guitarists. Page's dark, mysterious artistry clashed with Eddie's explosive precision, and for many, it added a new dimension of tension between the two legends. Was this a genuine critique or simply a young prodigy's way of carving out his own space by distancing himself from a towering legacy? By the 1980s, both Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen had become household names, each representing distinct eras and philosophies in rock guitar. Page's work with Led Zeppelin was celebrated for its depth and mystique. Every track in the Zeppelin catalog was rich with layered tones and effects that felt alchemical, an immersive sonic world that transported listeners. Page played not just like a guitarist, but like a conductor, crafting melodies that felt ancient, complex, and haunting. His riffs on tracks like Kashmir and Stairway to Heaven weren't just music, they were mood, myth, and legend. Van Halen, however, was the future. Eddie Van Halen was a firecracker in the room, a guitar genius who exploded onto the scene with a different set of priorities. To Eddie, every note was an expression of power and technical prowess. His performances, filled with high-speed tapping and dizzying solos, transformed rock into something fast, frenetic, and full of life. Where Jimmy Page reveled in mood and mystery, Eddie focused on precision, volume, and excitement. On stage, he was relentless, flashing his signature smile as he delivered solos that seemed to defy physics. For him, rock guitar wasn't about restraint or mystique, it was about pushing the very boundaries of what the instrument could do. This contrast became increasingly apparent to fans, who often saw Page as a craftsman and Eddie as a virtuoso. That distinction eventually brought the two into an almost unspoken competition. Eddie's pointed critiques of Page's live performances, calling them sloppy and lacking precision, spread quickly, sparking debate among fans. Was Eddie challenging the old guard, or was he simply disappointed by Page's less technical, more improvised stage style? This subtle rivalry evolved into a clash of philosophies. Jimmy Page embodied rock's old soul, rooted in blues and experimental soundscapes, while Eddie Van Halen symbolized the genre's youthful energy, speed, and modern edge. To fans, they represented an evolving definition of greatness in rock guitar. For years, Jimmy Page never publicly addressed Eddie's stinging critiques, and to many, his silence spoke volumes. It was as if he chose to let the words hang in the air, untouched. But when Eddie tragically passed away in 2020, marking the end of an era for rock guitar, Page finally broke his silence. In a deeply reflective tribute, he praised Eddie as the real deal, a guitarist whose dazzling technique had transformed rock music forever. His words resonated with fans who had long sensed the underlying tension, and Page's praise helped bridge the gap between the two legends. But his tribute was more than just praise, it was acknowledgement. Page recognized Eddie's fearless innovations and what they had done for the genre. He honored the younger guitarist's boundary-pushing brilliance, noting how Eddie's daring approach had inspired countless musicians. In doing so, Page seemed to reflect on his own legacy, perhaps seeing in Eddie's work the same drive to innovate that had once fueled his own rise with Led Zeppelin decades earlier. For fans, Page's message carried a bittersweet note, a respectful nod to Eddie's revolutionary impact, and a final recognition that the rock landscape they had once shaped together was now forever changed. Where rivalry once lingered, reverence took its place. In his parting words, Page conveyed the depth of his admiration, crafting a final chapter in a story of mutual influence, creative diversity, and, ultimately, respect between two giants of rock. The legacies of Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen echo through every corner of rock music. Each left an indelible mark that extends far beyond their individual styles and into the fabric of the genre itself. Page's layered, almost mystical approach to music offered rock a sense of depth and atmosphere, blending blues, folk, and psychedelia into sonic journeys. Tracks like Kashmir and No Quarter weren't just songs, they were immersive experiences, crafted with a meticulous hand and a visionary ear. His legacy lies not just in his technical skill, but in his ability to transport listeners, each note part of a broader tapestry of emotion and narrative. Meanwhile, Eddie Van Halen transformed the electric guitar into a vehicle of pure energy and speed. He pioneered techniques that gave rock its modern, electrifying edge. His signature tapping and frenetic stage presence turned concerts into athletic feats, each solo a daring display of precision. Eddie challenged the limits of what a guitarist could do, infusing Van Halen's music with an unrestrained joy and intensity that made rock feel dangerous and exhilarating once again. Where Page's legacy is steeped in the mystical and timeless, Van Halen's is dynamic and explosive, a legacy of raw power and innovation. Their contrasting styles revealed the wide spectrum of possibility within rock, proving that greatness can emerge from vastly different approaches. Page's dedication to the subtleties of sound and Van Halen's quest for technical mastery pushed not only each other, but the entire genre, in bold new directions. Page's final tribute to Eddie underscored the mutual respect between them, a rare bond where rivalry gave way to admiration. Together, their contributions continue to inspire generations of guitarists, showing that in rock, as in life, There is no single path to greatness.